Be thinking about embodied energy of how we're making our buildings and how they're operating. And we really do need to focus on that. We're out of the era of just making a beautiful thing. It's no longer appropriate where you're making something just to be beautiful, and it may be an enormous amount of embodied energy to do that thing. We can do both. And we got to be, I think, skilled enough and educated enough and have the experience and have the intention to do both. We can make something that people really love, but also is very low embodied energy. That's what architects need to be doing. Everyone wants that now. We all need to step up to it.
This is the Mass Timber Group Show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Brady, and we talk to sustainable building experts. Today, we caught up with Michael Moore, the principal and founder at Trace Birds, a full-service architectural and GC firm designing for a better world, building sustainable communities, all while respecting nature and sparking innovation. Trace Birds has over 130 projects in their portfolio, all of them unique and inspiring. Mike took us through his journey into the built environment and then shared on multiple projects and key lessons learned, including our favorite topic, mass timber.
You better watch out because Mike is changing the skyline of Denver as we know it. Trace Birds is the design team behind the 12-story, 100% exposed mass timber residential tall wood building called Return to Form in downtown Denver. They are also currently working on a brand new mass ply building for Illegal Pete's Burritos, plus a micro short-term rental project with CLT floor plates, beams, and a hybrid frame wall structure.
Before we jump in, if you want to learn more about residential mass timber and network with experienced industry professionals like Mike, we just announced the 2024 Residential Mass Timber Summit taking place in Denver. Head on over to our website to learn more and get on our waiting list. This event will fill up quick. So with that, let's get into it.
I believe we should be building with wood. It's a regional material, something here in North America we have. It's trees are a beautiful, amazing thing. Our forests, our global forests are incredible. They regenerate themselves. They're really the only material we have that regenerates itself like that to make bigger buildings out of. And it feels amazing to be around. Just the amber color of it at night with good artificial lighting on it. It's non-toxic, so it smells good. It smells good when you're working with it. And it's friendly to work with. Just as a carpenter and as a builder and artist, I've worked with wood in all different manners, from making sculptures to reclaiming century-old buildings in our urban cores that are big, heavy timber buildings where we're heavy-handedly changing their daylighting and their systems and their insulation and making them operate at a really low embodied energy. And then making new projects out of laminated wood and little teeny pieces of wood that we're putting together in different ways to, we're designing and building all different project types using laminated wood right now. And it's really flexible and it's a great material to expose the structure and keep it visible and not bury it behind layers. And yeah, the regenerative part is the big one. I think it has so much going for it. And I think, certainly in North America, we've learned some hard lessons, forestry lessons in the last 100 years, and are recovering from that and are recovering strong from that. And we know how to sustainably manage forests now, and we've got a lot of them. And so it's available.
Yeah, that's a great answer. How did you first get into the world of building? Like, what aside, what drew you into the architect space, the builder space? What did that journey look like?
Yeah. Sort of multi-pronged. I grew up uh, with fine arts. I was lucky that public schools back in the 70s and 80s offered fine art studio classes all the way through. I had the opportunity to spend time in wild places and big forests, and loved it and felt this deep connection with it. Um, and then to make money as a young man, I started framing and building homes because it paid a lot. And you could work as a teen doing that, and through my 20s, through college and such. And then when I did my undergrad at the University of California, Berkeley, in the late 1980s, I my degree was in conservation and resource studies, and I basically studied energy flow within a community. And so that community could be like North America, global, it could be like a city, and looking at transportation, agriculture, energy flow, really like fossil fuel energy, how it's used, how it's extracted, where it goes, material flow, that sort of things. And I learned when I was there that at least in North America, our buildings, the operating of our buildings, so the fossil fuels required to make electricity and the fossil fuels to heat our houses and heat water and operate them, that was like over 50% of the total fossil fuel usage that North America was using at the time. And so I also learned during that degree and that program that as a world, if we continued on the pace of fossil fuel usage, that we were going to have a problem. Number one, we're going to run out. But before we run out, it's going to get too hot here. And it's just going to be a general bummer because there's toxins and heavy particulates, and we started living denser and denser over time, and human health started to degrade because of the fossil fuel usage. So that's when I decided to go to architecture school. So I was like in my late 20s, and living in the mountains in southern Colorado in Crested Butte. And I was like, I gotta make some change here and make this better. I know what the problem is. I think architecture and building, there could be solutions there. And that's what led me to architecture, really to solve a problem more than anything. And I was happily surprised after a decade or so of being in architecture that my fine arts background was like a great advantage to making buildings that people also love. So it's not just making things that are these engineering feats of low energy, but that also like places that people love, and that the light and shadow is wonderful and views are curated, and the experience of materials and space are highly considered. Um, and architecture is so cool because it teaches you how to think a certain way. So I can apply that thinking to large scale sculpture now, or all these different building types, or we've designed some public parks recently. So put that more systems thinking into all these different manifestations of making things that people get to experience, and hopefully these things get to like influence people and be positive, be positive in the community.
Well, speaking about buildings that people love and influencing people, originally we met you through Andrew Katz, and you were the lead design team with the Return to Form, which
Yeah.
is a 12-story, 100% exposed mass timber building in downtown Denver. I think everyone is on the sidelines waiting for that to break ground. It's a stunning building. Were you working through that project before everyone got the green light to have the 100% exposed timber, or were you a little bit before that? I know you work with
Yeah.
Greg Kingsley with KLNA to make that happen, right?
Yeah, we were before that. And actually the developer, Andrew, and our structural engineer that we brought into the project, KLNA and Greg Kingsley and Trace Birds, we also brought in Arup as a fire protection consultant on the project, and that MEP actually on that project. We started the project, and Andrew really liked the idea of building an all wood structure. And at the time, to build 12 stories, we were going to only be able to expose less than 50% of that ceiling plane, which is, the CLT panels. And we, well, my firm, when we start a project, we don't make any assumptions. We listen to our clients, we look at the rule set is, we study the site, but then we look at, what are best outcomes and best solutions. And we thought on this, gosh, the building should really be about the wood. We need to make an efficient building, a financially efficient building too. And we can only have so many moves in all of our projects. You can't do great moves with everything. You got a couple of them, maybe even one. And we really felt for this project, let's do the work to see if we can expose 100% of it. So all the columns and all the beams and all the ceiling scapes, and that we really make the project about that. Like even our artificial lighting is lighting ceilings at night, and we have glass corners to the building. So then at night and during the day, you can really see the structure. And so, yeah, with KLNA and Arup and Andrew, we, it, able to get that early adoption of the tall wood provisions in Denver. This building is a 4B fully sprinkled building. Um, and, through an administrative modification, Denver adopted the 2024 IBC provision to allow 100% exposure. And that was for our building. So we were the first to get a administrative modification. We got it early. But now it's going to be switching over where anyone can do this without a modification. So, and it was all about, fire ratings and char levels and life safety, right? This is a life safety conversation. It's not about can wood hold the building up. It's it's a life safety conversation. And, Arup and others have done the reconnaissance on that. So the data is out there. So it was a matter of people adopting proven data.
So then is that in the very beginning for somebody, I know this is a monumental challenge, a huge building, a residential building, 84 units, correct?
Yes.
In the very beginning, what kinds of advice would you have for maybe future developers or developers trying to undergo a mass timber project? Are you spending an incredible amount of time on the front end, so the back end is just much more smoother? What's the difference you could say to traditional building to mass timber?
Commitment to that system early. But that's true of any system. The design is going to be more and more efficient if you commit to a system. But I think committing to a system.
Okay.
Yeah, we hear that a lot from a lot of different people that are undergoing mass timber. And a big reason why mass timber projects ultimately don't end up, or excuse me, why projects don't ultimately end up using mass timber is it's almost an afterthought. It's something that they try to spec out at the end of the process. And then things aren't set up correctly from the beginning. And so it gets rolled out. Has that been your
Yeah.
experience as well?
Well, it's just, it makes sense, designing a building. There's all, the structure is one of the systems that we're working with. There's all these other systems. So if the building's going to be about wood and being able to see all this, then that's going to influence what we do for mechanical systems. We're not seeing ductwork everywhere and chaos. It's going to affect our electrical design and our lighting. It's going to affect all these things. So it's early, I think early commitment. And, for Trace Birds on return to form, we started project with our client with the intention of, let's use wood in the most efficient way possible. And so before we designed the building or laid out units or did anything, we collaborated with our structural engineer. We collaborated with Era to see like what is that most efficient structure. And so it was there from the beginning. And then we really worked the program around that. And so, yeah, it influenced everything. So it can't be an afterthought. It's a totally, all the systems would be different if we were doing some like drop ceiling below, you know. So commitment from the beginning.
Do you think that a lot of that experience, or that you gained a lot of that different experience and insight, like through the many different project types, iterations, and sizes that Trace Birds has gone through? I mean, like, what's the journey
Yeah.
go from
Yeah.
Mike starting to be an architect to designing something like Return to Form? What does that look like?
Yeah. So yeah, I've been thinking about and working with wood for a very long time. And I'm in my mid 50s and I've been doing art for almost my whole life. And so, you know, it started with it started with, and it still is, I guess, you know, taking kind of random pieces of wood and gluing them together in laminates to make interesting shapes, to use different types of wood at different sizes and make them into structural things. Like I guess I'm kind of proud about this. Like our Trace Birds, like our projects, if people sort of look at our portfolio, like we don't decorate our buildings. Like what you see is what you get. You see wood, well, that's the wood holding up the roof. It's a post, it's a beam, it's a structural plate. You and so I think I learned that from the arts. Like art is not decoration. Art is concept and feeling and honesty for me. And so, yeah, laminate different things. So, you know, we designed and built a kids park that's really kind of like a sculpture park too for the town of Vail up in Vail, Colorado, a number of years ago. And we took all these random pieces of wood from past projects, laminated them together in these curvilinear shapes, and made these elevated nests out of them. And that's like a project where Trace Birds were like, you know, we'll design the project, we'll fabricate it all, we'll install it, we warranty it. Like we're very hands-on. You know, we're like a true full service architecture and general contracting company. So we design it and we make it. We don't always make it. Some of the bigger projects, like kind of like post 20 million, post $30 million projects, other general contractors build because it would overwhelm my office too much. It'd be too big of a percentage of the office on one project. And I really believe in I really believe in diversity, both with like project types and locations of where our projects are, and even client types. And so yeah, as an artist working with wood, laminating things together. And then when I started Trace Birds in 2000, our first project I did it design build. And mostly because the client didn't have a lot of money. And we came up with a really good idea together. And I wanted to use all these reclaimed materials to make it. I knew of some heavy timbers that were coming down at our old Stapleton Airport in Denver before DIA. It used to be Stapleton. There was also an Air Force wing to it, and which is now a neighborhood. But when they were taking those buildings down, I was privy and had access to some of that wood. So anyways, I did a timber frame south wall that I built with the client. Still really love that project. And then kind of Trace Birds started as a design build for we started with, that was a photography studio and a shop for working on cars. And then a lot of our projects in the last 23 years have been reclamation of existing old buildings, particularly in Denver and Oakland, California, and but primarily in Boulder, but primarily Denver. And most of those buildings are wood framed. So, but like heavy timber wood frame, like post and beam, wood decks, all like, things that are warehouses when we got a hold of them with dead pigeons and, you know, uh, no insulation, leaky, and then doing like heavy handed reworking of them. So I learned a ton about wood structures that way because to do it well, we would reverse engineer these buildings. By what I mean by that is, um, these 100-year-old timber frame warehouses don't come with like architectural plans. It's what you see is what you get. And so we would measure all the wood, grade the wood to see what quality it was, draw all the connections in there, and then collaborate with the structural engineering team to then how are we going to manipulate this building in terms of bringing in daylight, opening up roofs, and inserting new circulation, stairs and elevators, and all these things. So I learned a ton about sort of, um, gosh, we've done about 80 of those projects. I mean, we've completed just over 130 projects in the last 23 years, and about 80 of them are existing big warehousey, heavy timber, where we have done that process of reverse engineering. And then it just creates efficiency for our clients, because then when we when we collaborate with our structural engineers, if we don't have all that information, the structural engineers have to just kind of assume kind of worst case scenario. And then that leads to more engineering and bigger sizes of things and more work and more costs and more time. And so, and I really just like exposing these old buildings because they're beautiful. The brick, the wood, old steel work, old infrastructure and utility of the building. We try to keep like old elevator shafts and fabrication or manufacturing, systems that a lot of these buildings have.
I got to say, it's one of my favorite things about Trace Birds and your firm is you try to reuse, you try to use local elements and materials, but especially just like, one of the projects that we talked a little bit before this was the springs in Pagosa Springs, where it's almost made entirely out of beetle kill. And for if a lot of people don't know what beetle kill is, I actually had to look up the statistic because it always blows my mind. But between 1997 and 2010, more than 5 million hectares were affected and killed in the United States, which there's about 2.5 acres in 1 hectare. So about 25 million acres, or 4.7% of our forests were killed. But if you can get your hands on beetle kill, I love it. It has like a blue staining to it. And I just had a
yeah.
question about how do you source beetle kill, or what were some things that you learned on that project there using that material?
Yeah. Well, we've worked with it quite a bit. I will say one thing that fine arts did teach me is like it's okay to fail. I guess skateboarding taught me that, and life has kind of taught me that too. But like to progress something, you fail sometimes. And because we have a full shop at our office, we mock things up. So we try to get our things to fail before they end up in clients' work, right? Through mock-ups and understanding. But yeah, beetle kill specifically, it's a very soft wood, and it moves a lot. So over time, it just moves a lot. Especially, I like to use it very raw and natural, not a lot of finishes on it, things like that. So it's all about the connections and the types of glue you use and laminating it together and switching grain as you laminate, so that as a laminate, it's very strong together. One individual piece might twist and stuff, and when it all comes together, it becomes very planar and solid. Because yeah, we've designed and built quite a bit of furniture out of it. We actually we were the designers for Denver's Biennial of the Americas. It was this inaugural North and South America, all these artists come together and sort of government people to talk about collaboration in Denver. And we built the space for that. And we did it all out of beetle kill too, also to kind of prove a point, because people were sort of negative about the wood. Like, people like, oh, it's kind of trashy wood. It's good for burning, but it's actually not a very good like firewood. Trust me. It's just like super smoky and not good for burning, actually. Um, and that, it's just like low grade. And, I think fine arts and our reclamation project has taught me that things that at first look really low grade, if you pay enough attention to them and apply um, intelligence to things and uh, structure and composition and engineering, you kind of make anything beautiful. And so that was the challenge of working with that material for me, and continues to be. Yeah, we're actually proposing beetle kill to do a very large project right now, a housing project up in town of Eagle, Colorado. We are working on a 160-acre parcel where we are going to make an eco village, and by that, a nature-focused living residential on a river. And we are looking to utilize beetle kill with our facades as a rain screen. And all of our sort of eaves and ceilings. Hopefully we can afford CLT plates for that project. But so yeah, it's and there's a lot of that material. You asked earlier, like, how do you source it? I mean, at first it was oh at first it was some smaller lumber mills. There's actually one between Boulder and Lyons that has been working beetle kill for a long time. And then even folks like Weyerhaeuser and Alpine Lumber, like some of the big folks now, you can get that milled and in one buy material mostly. So you're kind of committing to laminating or using as a veneer.
I love that concept of going through and using what some people would consider like a trash tree or a burn tree, and turning it into something that's really valuable and aesthetically pleasing.
And
And
unique
then
too,
and unique
Yeah.
for sure. You talked about doing 80 some projects on like that more using existing building type framework. I would say that my favorite project that I've seen in your portfolio is the steam building. Uh,
Yeah.
all of that heavy exposed timber with that industrial steel in there. I think that there's a lot of buildings out there that are of that age, of that style, of that quality that just get knocked down.
Yeah.
What have you kind of
Yeah.
learned
It
working with
was,
those projects?
yeah. It's, again, our process, Trace Bird's process works really well with a project like that. It's, we start with no assumption. So we really look at the situation. So we spent a lot of time in that. Myself and my project manager spent a lot of time in that building before we started design, really looking at what was there and uncovering it. Um, and then, that building is right on the South Platte River, and it's in a flood zone. So it had some challenges from the get go. In the flood zone, it had some serious water damage. The floors in there were up to 6 inches of different heights. I mean, these are big floor plates. That's a 60,000 square foot building. So it's a big building. And it's a late 1800s building. And it's all Doug fir. I pretty confident that all that came out of our Pacific Northwest, because it's real strong and real straight, really great wood, and some big columns. And so early on, my client Sue Powers, we walked through there and Cherry Glick and we all came to the conclusion after walking through there, like, if we can turn this into a Class A office space, but not mess it up, like not have to cover it all up and get rid of all the personality. Cause there was a lot of building had a long history. It was a rag baling facility. It was a soap making back in the day on the river, and a biker bar in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was like a gang biker chopper like dugout, because it was basically abandoned for a number of years. I mean, it was in rough shape, had some fires in it over time. So there's some burnt out areas. But we really just took a deep look at what was actually there. And we worked with KLNA on that project, and Greg Kingsley, he's great with the old timber buildings too. We worked hand in hand. Um, and we came up with, or Trace Bird, Trace Birds came up with some solutions that, allowed it all to be exposed without, covering it up. So, cause with Class A office, like, you can't hear the person above you walking. So we got to deal with that. You need to be warm, you need to be more or less 68 to 72 degrees in there. And, it was an uninsulated building that was, not watertight, and had some structural brick walls that were delaminating, right? Where the 2 wide brick is coming apart because of water damage over time. We just kind of did surgery on it instead of like knocking it down. It was like we did surgery, and we wanted to daylight it. So we opened up this big core and put a lot of skylights in, and did a raised floor system so that we could put all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, data, all of that between the vintage wood floor and then a floating like concrete panel, like basically like a tech floor that you see in like tech projects. We've done a lot of technology company headquarters. So I knew that from their data rooms, you can raise these thin, light platforms. And then what that allowed then is then when you're the floor below, it's just wood and beauty. You don't see any of that stuff. So those kinds of moves. And then, running sophisticated energy modeling to really look at the building and where is insulation going to be most impactful. So that's almost always, nearly all climates, that's the roof. Um, and and then, how to put energy efficient systems and controls in a project like that, so that it's using the least amount of fossil fuel energy to operate itself, over time.
You've worked with some other really high profile names. A really cool brand that's, I don't know how long it's been around. I'm sure you know, but like the Fjall Raven, which just happened to be in the Plat 15 mass timber building downtown. And you talked about, you were kind of on the outside looking in a little bit on the Plat 15 project, but you were the design team behind Fjall Raven. Was there any lessons learned, or as you kind of were watching that project get built?
Yeah, it was great because it was one of Denver's first new, post 3-story mass timber buildings. Yeah, we've been working with Fjallraven of Sweden, doing their flagship retail. And they're very wood based. They love wood. And so we did a really nice store for them, actually in a vintage mass heavy timber building in Seattle, right on Pine and Second Street, right there down by the market, the Pike Street Market. But then when they wanted to do a flagship in Denver, they chose that building really because it was a mass timber building. They wanted their brand associated with that. And so we designed and built their space on the whole ground floor on the corner. We actually designed and built Royal Robins also, which is a sub brand of theirs. And so so when we started on site, the timber frame was pretty much totally up. And it was so beautiful. They used a really light white spruce for their CLT and their post and beams. And then as we continued, I just noticed that, as the system started to get installed and conference rooms, because it's mostly office above where we built, we exposed everything. Our space is totally open. We actually did a big operable wall. So the building, so the Fjall Riven space is kind of indoor outdoor, even though it's smack dab in downtown Denver. Yeah, just starting to see the ceiling get more and more covered up over time in the hallways and in the conference rooms. And it seemed like such a shame to me, because like the wood is so much more beautiful than the drop ceiling. And so watching that made me very, well, it reminded me that with a new mass timber building, we've got to really think that through so we could expose it all. Like there's ways of doing that. And that, the return to form project that we briefly talked about earlier, that was the goal. Let's keep it all exposed. Let's do systems and let's think through fire sprinkling and all of our electrical wiring so that it's not messing it up. So it's just, it is what it is. There's not a bunch of other stuff being a distraction.
So going from watching the Plat 15 go up to going through the entire design process on return to form, you now have a few more mass timber projects in the pipeline. Can you share anything about those ones?
Yeah, they're very diverse. And I'm really excited about them. The one though, it's hard to say which one will be completed as a build first, but perhaps we're doing a ground up in Denver on Colfax Avenue, very urban environment, a ground up burrito shop for illegal Pete's. And so it's like a 4,000 square foot building, very simple. But it's on a decent sized lot. So we have designed a really great landscaping and outdoor space. We're planting a bunch of trees. But the building is mass plywood. So it's a single plane tilted to the south at the most efficient angle to the south to make the most energy with solar panels. So it's a mass ply plane with solar panels on the outside directly applied or not ballasted. And then it's post and beam mass plywood also. And I think that we are the builder of it, and we'll self-perform that part because it's going to be really easy because it's all being made off site. So it's about a good crane operator and having a good rubber mallet, heavy rubber mallet. And the project is all electric. So that was a big switch for illegal Pete's. I think he has about 20 of them between Colorado, Arizona, California, New Mexico, something like that. And so an all electric kitchen. And the energy modeling, we won't know until this thing operates for a year or 3 and we get all the data, but it should operate very close to net zero energy. And by that, I mean like in the most legitimate, proper way of net zero energy. Like we're going to make as much energy on site with our big solar panel roof, 70 kilowatt hours. The energy made, our intention is that that's what the site uses on an annual basis. And so the all electric kitchen, there's a lot of technology that has arrived in the last few years, or our client had already been pursuing that because there are some other benefits to that also with getting more material out of his meats with the slow cooking of some of this electric induction stuff. And the city of Denver and the state of Colorado is very progressive, and we are going all electric with our commercial projects. Right now, it's projects above 25,000 square feet, but I believe it will be all projects in my career. So I'm always not always an early adopter, but I like being on the progressive sides of things. I'm okay with early adoption. You're hearing my wolf dog. Yes.
You said you have a wolf dog?
Yeah, she has emerged from the couch.
Nice.
I think she's wanting to go out of the room. Well, we'll see. If she keeps on making noise, I may need to let her out.
No
No
problem.
worries. So of the 100,
So that's one that we'll be designing and building in 2024. We've done the design, but and then we have it's basically like an Airbnb hotel right on Larimer Street, the River North Art District, where a lot of our work has been in the last 20 years, particularly. And this is like a 3-story mixed use sort of micro unit, and it's CLT plates, so all the floor plates and plates, beams, and then it's a hybrid. So we're doing framed walls are all the structural vertical support. One of the things that makes that project really special is the way the site laid out. We created a canyon, so we have units and units, and we have space open to the 30-foot wide space open to the stars. And so we're planting trees in there, and it's elevated. So it's like a giant sort of topiary green roof with trees and native regional Colorado foothill vegetation. Carla Dakin, landscape architect, helped us a lot with that. And we've collaborated with her a lot of bringing regional plants into our projects, both in the landscape, but within the building and on sides of buildings and on their roofs and on their outdoor spaces. It's a inexpensive way to have a lot of impact with making something that feels really good to be around, vegetation, I believe, kind of like trees with making our buildings. It's a very efficient process. And it's regenerative and water and sun and some intelligence, but it's plants are pretty amazing, incredibly resilient and adaptive, and just like our trees are. It's pretty inspiring. I wish architecture could do some of those things. The depressing thing about designing a building is when we finish our project, it's over time, things like humans, we decompose and we degrade over time. So it's we can't, we can regenerate. Humans, we do generate cells. The buildings don't have that ability yet to regenerate cells. The closest thing we can get to it is making them out of things that can regenerate, which trees and wood is preferred.
So of all of the 130 plus projects that you worked on, reclaimed buildings, mass timber, traditional concrete steel, all of those combined, is there any words of wisdom or philosophies that you would impart to the next generation of architects that you wish that they would take up that mantle and pursue?
Be thinking about embodied energy of how we're making our buildings and how they're operating, and we really do need to focus on that. We're out of the era of just making a beautiful thing. We're out of that era. That's dated. It's no longer appropriate, where you're making something just to be beautiful, and it may be an enormous amount of embodied energy to do that thing. We can do both. And we got to be, I think, skilled enough and educated enough and have the experience and have the intention to do both. We can make something that people really, really love, but also is very low embodied energy and low embodied operating energy. Those can be together. And that's what architects need to be doing, period. There isn't another option where that is what we need to do. And so focus on that because, I'm happy to say, at least around here, authorities in charge and building departments and our government and our clientele and the open market, they want that. Everyone wants that now. We don't want these energy hog buildings, for a developer or a long hold operator, owner of a building. The energy it uses over its lifetime is significant to those folks. So we have the technology, we have the engineering, we have the data to make all of our projects very low embodied energy. And we all need to step up to it. Ownership needs to step up. Designers need to step up. Banks need to step up. Investors need to step up. It's time.
Yeah, no, I think there's a new a revolution happening out there. That's pretty cool. Who inspires you in this industry?
Um, I'm inspired by a lot of things. Uh, specific career influencers. When I went and got a master's degree in architecture at CU Denver in the late 1990s, and I wrote a thesis. And there is an architect in Switzerland named Peter Zumthor, Zumthor. And I had seen some pictures of his projects, and there was something about them that it was like the first time I saw just a rawness of how he was making his buildings and an honesty of materialism and a regionalism that I just hadn't seen before. And so I went to Switzerland and I interviewed him. It was awesome. He took the time to do like a 3-hour interview. And then I went and saw all of his buildings at the time, which was only a handful. It was less than 10. And they were all in his region. And then after I saw all these buildings and experienced them, spent real time with these buildings, I interviewed him again. And I think it was like a confirmation for me that it could be done. Like you could make buildings out of regional materials, keep them totally raw and exposed, and that could create something that is really beautiful and really impactful and pure. And so, yeah, it was just kind of this like confidence builder to see that it could be done. And then I started Trace Birds soon after. And I've kept that similar mentality with all of our projects. I mean, that intention to like be confident in that structure and pure materiality and honesty can create something that's really beautiful. We don't need to decorate or use expensive materials or rare materials to make our things. We can use these very common, simple, even materials that some people think are like trash or like, what are we going to do with all this beetle kill? Or what are we going to do with all this demolition material coming out of this building? I see that, and Trace Bird sees those things as like an opportunity. Like it's been pretty fun to, we made a few projects recently where I guess we've been doing this all along, but the River North Art Park is in Denver. It's a 3-acre park that we designed and built. It's mostly landscape, but there's some existing buildings that we manipulated, and there's existing a lot of concrete on the site and stuff. But when we took materials away, so like when we demoed materials, like for instance, one of the buildings, we took away some of the roof and stuff to make like a courtyard, like within the building. And then we cut up the concrete floor to then plant trees actually in the building that was now an open space. But then we would take that concrete and like make benches and furniture and stairs and things of like, we make stuff out of what we extracted from the site and try to keep it all just happening there. Like I love that challenge. I did that with my home. We like disassembled it and then reassembled it into something different. I like the challenge of it. I like the restraint in it. You learn things. I tend to experiment with my art and my own architecture projects for me and my family. And I've learned a lot from having that opportunity to like experiment. That was a big part of why I wanted to have Trace Birds be a design build firm, because I felt in my pure architecture experience before Trace Birds, there's like a real divide between the architect and the builder. Um, the architect would work with a client, come up with this thing, and then the builder would price that. There'd be a round of value engineering, and then they would build it. I noticed, I really wanted to use reclaimed materials in projects, and the builder would be like, where do I get these things? Or, how am I going to procure them 6 months before we need them? And I just sort of short circuited that with Trace Birds. Like I speculatively buy materials. I don't even know what I'm going to do with them yet, but I know their quality, like 4x12 timbers that are 24 foot long that come out of an old building. Like I know I can use them for something. And so like procure those sorts of things just allows us to experiment more, mock up things to prove to engineers or prove to building departments that like this is a good material and it's structural. We've done a bunch of those and done some where we've proven some pretty crude means that things are structural, that are old, bowling alley lanes that we've used as mezzanines, and proving that their deflection is, less than L over 140 and things like that. So, yeah.
No, I love that way of thinking. I completely agree. One of the things that you see when people do so many projects sometimes is they kind of develop, or maybe not develop, but they kind of get known for a very homogenistic style. And I think that's something that you have completely avoided. Like everything is very project and site specific. And so building on all of those projects and taking all those lessons learned and going after new and exciting things, I'm curious, what are you after next? What's next for Trace Birds? What's next for Mike?
Yeah, just we want to work on projects that affect the most amount of people. And by that I mean like that people get to interact with it, so these urban projects, and projects where they're with clients that want and believe in going low embodied energy and committing to that from the beginning and value that. And diversity, just continue the diversity of projects. Like we like really big master planning projects that then we end up doing the architecture and end up doing the interiors and doing the furniture. But I also love making a large scale sculpture, where we get to invent with some materials and play with them. I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, taking on more and more of like landscape design and being Trace Birds being a real voice and sort of leader in that with our landscape groups, and bringing all these, using system projects that use systems thinking to solve problems. It's all motivating to me, and it's never gotten old. It's very challenging, making things in the real world. I mean, it's just a challenging thing to do. It's a lot of hard work. And I've been blessed with a supportive family, my wife, my children, of going for it with this stuff. And I've been blessed with some really strong employees and now partners, of Trace Birds. And yeah, when I think about the future, is like continuing to develop and attract really great, people to work with and realize these things, and people that value really doing the right thing. And that's the plan.
Well, it's a good plan. Before we ask our last question, where can people find you if they want to work with you in the future?
Yeah, just our website, tresbirds.com, TRES birds, like a Mexican three, Tres birds. Um, and you can contact me through the contacts and learn more about us. Certainly, I've we've documented most of our projects, not all of them, but a lot of our portfolio is on there over time, and we have some case studies on there.
Yeah, I know one of my favorite projects of yours is Uchi. If anybody is in Denver and they want to have some of the best sushi they've ever had in their life and go see just a really, really cool, unique project. I was looking around with my wife and I'm just like, this was before I even had any clue who you were. I'm like, man, this is one of the coolest buildings I've ever seen. Like the brick, you have like, missing brick and it's been turned into
Crystal bricks.
okay, yeah. And
Yeah, we had these custom fabricated crystal bricks made.
it's
Yeah, no,
so cool.
that's a special project. So we master planned that whole square block in Denver. We won an RFP process with Denver Housing Authority, and so we master planned the whole block. It's like 100 condos, and it's mixed use. And wow, we had designed the whole square block, and then Uchi came on board to lease the space while the building was getting built, and they wanted Trace Birth to design and build their space within the building that we designed. And we had already designed the greenhouses above. That was a part of the original project.
That was
I
unique
think that was
too.
a big part of what attracted Uchi to that spot specifically, because they'd have this big greenhouse that we already put an Oculus in, because I knew I wanted some sort of connection. And they were great to work with. They are really have this amazing chef and this amazing leadership, and great experience going into it. They had done 3 Uchis in Texas. They're from Austin, so they had good experience, and it was cool. They work with this really excellent architect out of Austin, but they, with the Denver one being their first one outside of Texas, they really wanted to work with a firm that was like regional and really knew the area, and that's why they hired, part of why they hired Trace Birds. Yeah, the timber ceiling in the space is actually, if you really look at it, it's just all scrap wood. It is all the stuff that I couldn't stand to like recycle. It was like small pieces of wood. It was just such random out of all these random old projects of ours. I'd been carrying some of that around, you know, different workshops. I'm sure my staff was like, what the hell are we still like moving this material around? We haven't used it for years, but it was all the scraps basically from like 10 years of projects. That's that whole ceiling. But we ordered it in a way, and we detailed it in a way where it monitors sound, so that, I mean, one of the things that space does very well, that really bugs me in a lot of restaurants, is like when you can't hear people talk, because because that restaurant is always happening. I mean, you go there Monday night, 5 o'clock, and it's just 200 people and they're full. Like it's 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, it's full. And it's a lot of people. And so sound attenuation and wood used well is like awesome at it. Yeah, that was a special project. It's nice having not all of my projects I can just roll in on a Monday night at 9 and get to experience it again. A lot of them are offices or private, homes, things like that. So it's kind of nice to have a project where you get to like enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I really, if people are in Denver, they have to go see Uchi. There's something with those crystal bricks, like the light, like it dances through, and then the timber false ceiling. I can't recommend it enough. Well, if one last question that's kind of fun. If you had the power to change anything in the world about, architecture or the industry itself, what would you change and why?
Wow, that's a big question. I would change the ownership, whether they're a developer or the money or the land or I would change that the designers and the ownership, that they think long term, that each of these projects become like a long hold investment. Like if everyone just say, okay, we're gonna at least hold this thing for 20 years, people would make totally different decisions, because spending a little bit more on renewable energy, like it pays for itself in 7 years. So then you have free energy for the next 13 years. Like it's easy to make that decision if you're a long hold, or spend a little bit more on a very regional wood to structure your building. And that asset, because people love it and it's good architecture, it's gonna pay off later. I think short-sightedness of, let's just, unfortunately, a lot of buildings get built where, I think the team is committed to, hey, let's make something good enough. Let's get it full of people and renters, and then let's sell it in sub 5 years and be good with that. I don't want to participate in that. That's not what we should be doing. We can't be good enough. We need to be good to great. And we know how to do it now. This isn't like a mystery. I mean, the energy modeling software that I'm able to run in my little office of 20 people, is incredible. Like we have these tools now where we can do this. We can make buildings that are net zero energy. Like we can actually do it. And we can heal this earth. Like I believe we can make things better. We're the victims of ourselves. So we're not the victims of nature or victim of God or whatever your belief is. We are victims of ourselves. And so we can do better. And life is short. So might as well go for it.
That rings loud and clear. I agree. I hope that more people have that forethought or that thinking, so we can change the world. We are victims of ourselves. That's really well said. Well, you're changing the entire Denver landscape and the surrounding local area. I know also you stretch far. I mean, you have projects in Japan and whatnot, but we're excited for return to form. I'm excited to get an illegal Pete burrito at that Mass Plywood place, facility when that's up. And also your short-term rentals with 3-story mixed use CLT floor plates and beams, hybrid frame walls. Please keep it up. And we're excited to have you on the podcast and kind of speak through this. So thank you very much for taking care of us and kind of opening our minds a little bit. Please follow Mike Moore at Trace Birds on LinkedIn and get in touch with them for future projects. So thank you so much, Mike.
Well, thank you guys for making this happen and getting the word out. It was really valuable to me, the conference the both of you put on in Denver last January. Again, just being able to see the T3 building at that stage of the game, being able to make connections. I made a great connection with the Gates Family Foundation and now the Mass Timber Coalition that we're creating. So I really thank you. You're stitching some things together that need to be stitched together. And that's how this is a collaborative effort. Like I probably said a lot of I and me and Trace Birds today. It is super collaborative, from like my employees and my partners to the engineers we work with, to our clientele, to folks like yourselves that are bringing education to the market and making connections. This is a collaborative thing to make change and to make progress. And we're way stronger together. Like we're much stronger being when we're working together to make positive change. So this is what we need to be doing. And I'm happy to spend the last hour with you guys. So thanks.
Yeah, no, we're full steam ahead for the next year's event in Denver. We hope that you can be there, and that's the biggest thing is just networking and education and pushing the envelope forward. And that new Colorado Mass Timber Coalition, we're excited to be on that as well with you. So there's big things. The Gates Family Foundation is making some monumental moves out here for Colorado. Well, that being said, well, have a great day out there. We'll talk to you soon. All right, Mike.
All right. See you guys.
Cheers.
Bye.